Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm AndyRC and today I'm going to be checking out the ISDT 608AC charger. Now I'm a big fan of ISDT products, mainly because of their reliability. My daily driver is the ISDT D2, which you can still buy for the moment, and it's been switched on constantly for 2.5 years. And even though it's probably not a good idea to have it powered up all of the time, it still works and it hasn't missed a beat. Now I know many people today favour the Hobbymate Duo, but when I reviewed it, the cooling fan made a constant noise, and seeing as I'm too lazy to unplug the charger, it was a deal breaker for me at the time. But I've been told since then they have fixed that issue with a firmware update, but the D2 still does everything that I need. One of the reasons I like it is because of its built-in power supply. I just hate having to faff around with a separate power supply. So it sits in the same place in my house with two parallel balance boards attached to it. One is for charging multiple LiPos with XT60 connectors, and the other is for charging XT30 connectors. When plugged into the wall, it can charge at 12 amps, and I usually only charge 4 LiPos at a time anyways, but with 12 amps, I could charge 8 1500 mAh 4S LiPos at 1C if I wanted to. An advantage of the Hobbymate Duo is that it can accept an external power supply or a LiPo for field charging, but I found it too big for field charging, and as I said before, other than for this review, I don't like to move it. If I do charge in the field, I use this beat up ISDT 608, which I guess is the predecessor to this new 608AC because I don't think they make the old one anymore. I just plug in a large 4S LiPo into it. So for me, having a small separate charger in the field and a larger, more capable charger left static at home works better for me. But if you don't have the cash for the two chargers, then the ISDT 608AC has a removable AC power supply. So you can either power it from a wall socket or power it externally. And it's around the same price as their DC only Q6 and Q8 chargers. So what's the catch? Well, the removable 50-watt power supply can only charge 4S LiPos at around 3.2 amps, which means if I wanted to charge LiPos in parallel, I could only charge two 1500 mAh 4S LiPos at just over 1C, which would take an hour for them to be fully charged. So for my needs, it doesn't fit the bill. But what if you only fly micros? Well, actually, you could charge 5 650 mAh 4S LiPos at 1C, or 4 850 mAh 4S LiPos at just under 1C, so it's a better charger for micros. And when you remove the AC power supply and use a LiPo or an external power supply, it can charge up to 8 amps, which is the same as my old DC 608. However, it's still quite a big charger compared to the older one, and its screen is very small for its size. It does have some features that none of my other chargers have. For example, if you use the AC power supply, then it can output as a general power supply from 30 volts down to 2 volts and a current output from 5 amps down to 0.2 amps. You would have to make up an XT60 adapter to whatever else you are trying to power up, but it could be useful when building a model because you could substitute it for plugging in a battery when working on the bench. There's a new option called Destroy, which will discharge your LiPo to 0 volts if you want to recycle it, and it can discharge up to 1 amps depending on how many cells your LiPo has, so it discharges at 0.6 amps with a 4S, and the same goes for storage charge as well. Unfortunately, it doesn't do fast discharging. There are some chargers that will storage charge a LiPo fast when you're powering the charger up with another LiPo, essentially reversing their role so it transfers the charge back to the other LiPo, but this charger doesn't have that functionality. A quick tip if you are powering the charger with a LiPo is to long press the dial and then set a voltage cutoff so that it doesn't drain the LiPo's voltage past the point of no return. So I'd say set it to 14 volts with a 4S and 10 volts with a 3S LiPo. It does support the GoBack technology, although I don't think you can actually buy smart batteries anymore, but if you can, then it eradicates the need to plug in your balance cable because it reads the individual cells through the XT60 connector. It's also got a USB port for updating the firmware, but I really wish it had a USB out like the D2 has, because it's really handy for charging up things like cameras, or if you're in the field, then things like your phone. It does run quiet, however, like all of these type of chargers, if you are charging at a high current, then the fan kicks in and out periodically and it's quite noisy. You get given the power connector, but you will have to buy a wall adapter for the country that you live in. So while this charger might not be for me, I can see it appealing to some people, especially for the price. But the D2 has been an absolute workhorse and has been powering this channel since August 2017, so I think I'll be sticking with it, along with the smaller chargers for field charging. You can't get this one anymore. I hear the Q6 or the Q8 are a good choice, and like I said before, I'm yet to have any issues with any of their products. I'm sure there have been instances where they have failed, but I can only describe my experience. Another one of their products I can't live without is their fast discharger, because if I go on a trip I always charge too many batteries in case one of my buddies needs a spare, and the FD200 will storage charge the batteries within minutes if I haven't used them. So I'll put a link in the video description as well as a pinned comment if you wish to get the 608AC, as well as any other recommendations. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.